Hello and welcome. I have with me Admiral Vice Admiral Pradeep Chauhan, Director General of the National Maritime Foundation, and we're going to talk about the Indo-Pacific. In more specific terms, the seminar that is now being hosted by the Navy in Delhi. Sir, Indo-Pacific is a big thing nowadays. Everybody's talking about it. What's the difference at this seminar?
Well, the Indo-Pacific Regional Dialogue is now in its 5th edition, as you know. It is the single most important convening platform in which voices throughout the Indo-Pacific, ranging from the eastern seaboard of Africa or the eastern coast of Africa all the way across to the western coast of the Americas, have an opportunity to exchange perspectives, resolve differences, see how to deal with the geopolitical impacts that are taking place in the maritime domain, particularly in respect of the rise of China. There's another feature, and that is that the reason why this Indo-Pacific has gained such traction over the past few years is that there's an increasing realization across the world, across this particular region and within the government of India, that the next 200 odd years are going to be centuries of the seas. And in these 200 years, India will either be a maritime power or we will not be any kind of power at all. And consequently, if we want to raise our economy, if we want to jump our GDP from its present $3 trillion level to an $8 trillion level in less than a decade, and then move that up to a $13 trillion level, then our trade, our port infrastructure, our entire maritime connectivity piece has to be given the sharpest and most unswerving focus. That's what the Indo-Pacific is about, and that's what the Indo-Pacific Regional Dialogue is about.
So you mentioned 3 possible obstacles to India's rise, including ports and all that. In terms of, the geopolitics, where do you see that challenge coming from?
China. So long as China is presently moving into the Indian Ocean segment of the Indo-Pacific with a startling degree of opacity. So we're not able to, it's not that China is the only non-regional player in this area. It is that China's lack of transparency of both intent and action are deeply worrying. For example, no other nation has started off with naming underwater features. Not that this underwater feature naming or renaming has any legal standing, but it establishes new normals. No other nation is utilizing such large numbers of distant water fishing vessels to engage in activities which are only peripherally attached to fishing. And therefore, all of these structures, all of these areas are problematic. Now, because India and China are both competing for the same resources, both in terms of markets as well as sources from the same region, we are bound to have a problem with each other. India and China are like 2 children with a Pepsi can. We both got a straw, okay? You got a straw, I got a straw. We're now sucking away. It's a Pepsi can. It's not transparent. So in less than 4 seconds, one of us is going to tell the other guy, hey, you're sucking harder than me. Consequently, there is very little opportunity that is available for collaborative activity. We definitely need, no matter what we do, whether it's economics or it's its superset, which is geopolitics, because geopolitics is geoeconomics plus non-geoeconomic goals. And no matter what we do, so long as if we don't have any rules, then we can do nothing. I mean, what stops you from suddenly getting up from your chair and walloping me right now? We don't do that because we have a set of norms and a rule set. It's not that anybody objects to having rules. Neither does China, nor do we. We believe that the rules-based order upon which our interaction takes place must be those rules that have been derived by international consensus. China believes that there should be rules as well, but they should be derived in one country, in one capital, and the rest of you either, my way or the highway. Now that is deeply problematic for us. Finally, China's economic activities take very little cognizance and provide very little respect to other countries' sovereignty. For example, we in India, we use this term all the time. We say the CPEC. Don't we use the word CPEC? China-Pakistan Economic Corridor. This is deeply offensive. We should be using China, Pakistan occupied Kashmir economic corridor. It should be CPOC C. And the faster we move from CPOC C to CPOC C from CPEC, the harder and stronger will be our epoxy.
Do you envisage the situation where you'll find the Chinese Navy doing the kind of things to us in our seas that they are doing with the Philippines? Say, and other countries?
Do not have a pushback in geopolitical terms. Don't have pushback. This is an inevitability. China doesn't. Many people ask us, if we were nicer to China, would China be nicer to us?
No way.
And the answer is that China has a sense of identity which stems from its belief that it is the Middle Kingdom surrounded by barbarian states whose sole raison d'etre is to simply pay obeisance and homage in one fashion or another. So China, have you seen Game of Thrones?
Yeah.
In Game of Thrones, China is a bit like Queen Cersei. China says, what's your role? Your role is, who are you? You're a supplicant? Well, supplicate. Me? My role is to knock your head off from time to time. I'll do my job, you do your job.
Yeah.
Now, for us, this is unacceptable because A, we are not in the Game of Thrones, and if we were, we are not willing to be supplicants. We are willing to be a sovereign power in our own right, and what we have, therefore, is areas in which we can collaborate, cooperate with China, then we will. But if China often asks us things like, or not China, but Chinese officials ask us things like, hey, Admiral, at the Trans-Himalayan border, there's some issue. But at sea, we don't have any issue. Yeah. Can't we cooperate at sea? And I told him, I don't know what school you went to, but the school I went to told us we have only one geopolitical entity called India. There isn't a separate India which is in the Trans-Himalayan border and a separate India which is operating at sea. So if you violate me in one place, you violate me everywhere. And therefore, our response to you is based upon not what you say alone, but how you behave. And since past behavior is the only accurate barometer for future behavior prediction, we worry. And we therefore, I would like to summate this by saying that, yeah, we trust in Beijing, but we would like to keep our powder dry.
Do you think it's just a question of time before China moves in some strength into the Indian Ocean?
She's already in some strength, and there's no doubt that if the Indian Navy is perceived to be weak or vacillating, that China's strength, naval strength in the Indian Ocean will increase. Because it is a fundamental issue that trade and all the elements of trade, connectivity and all the elements of connectivity, power and all the elements of power, comprehensive power, stem from your ability to be perceived, your perception management. So if can China and can India actually can the Indian Navy take on the Chinese Navy? I think so.
Yeah.
So long as we perceive we can, we can. The day we perceive we can't, we can't. And therefore, do I think that the Chinese Navy or the Chinese forces will be increasingly present in the years to come? Most certainly. What should we do about it? There is a range of options that we have, and we are trying to say, can we not all behave as gentlemen ought to behave? And if we are going to behave, can't we behave in our neighborhood? Can't we have neighborly relations? Do we have to be hoods? And consequently, if China behaves in accordance with the established rules of maritime commerce, which it hasn't so far, but if it did, we would be great.
Yeah.
If it isn't, and if it doesn't, then we do not want to be pushed around and prevent our reactions. Our actions are not a function really of what China is or isn't. We have maritime interests of our own.
Yeah.
These maritime interests are not a function of China or USA or anybody else. They are ours. The degree of ease or the degree of difficulty with which we will accomplish those objectives, those aims, that is a function of everybody else, but not the aims themselves.
Yes.
So we are trying hard to pursue the Indian interest. We're not trying to stymie anybody else's interest.
Yes, yeah.
And so long as other interests can coexist in peaceful harmony with us, whether it is the US or Australia or the UK or France or great, it's only when you have a country which has decided that it wants to start the relationship on a belligerent note that we have a problem. For example, you must have heard everybody say that, so many Chinese say all the time that they talk about this Malacca dilemma.
Yeah.
Why? Because oil flows have to go through various choke points, of which Malacca is one. It's a generic term. You ever heard of Japan saying we have a Malacca dilemma? Yeah. You ever heard South Korea saying, oh, we have a Malacca dilemma? Why don't they say that? Don't they have a Malacca dilemma? No. Why? Because they have friends. China doesn't have any friends right now. The only friends she's got is North Korea and Pakistan, and I don't think those are the best kind of friends.
So last question, since you mentioned they are friends, do you see a collaborative effort between them when China enters in strength into the Indian Ocean?
Yes, and do I not see this already have happened? Yes, at the strategic level, has the Indian Ocean area not been vitiated by the introduction of nuclear weapons that came in from a collaboration or a collusion between China, North Korea, and Pakistan? Yes, they did. Is this likely to continue in the future? Yes, it is. Will we be likely to see collusion as opposed to direct collaboration? Certainly. Are we likely to see collaboration? Overt? I don't know. It depends. But I think that you don't need overt collaboration if collusion will do. And so I certainly think that will happen.